Oh, hey there. Okay. I was just gonna ask where the hell I am, but I guess I have time to listen. So, what's this story about?
Let us begin.
The storybook from Super Mario Galaxy is the greatest piece of Mario media ever created. It tells such a fascinating story about a young girl learning to live in the moment and do what she loves most. But before we get to the storybook itself, we have to lay the groundwork of what it is in the first place. Throughout your playthrough of the game, you will unlock individual chapters of the storybook which you can read in the library of the Comet Observatory. It is a completely optional activity which you can choose to opt in or out of, so that's already a plus. If you're not interested in it, which I will try to convince you of the opposite by the end of this video, you can ignore it and play the greatest Mario game of all time instead. If you are interested, you can go about reading it at your own pace. You can read each section once you unlock them, or read it all together once you've unlocked it all. Whenever you decide to go into the library, you see a multitude of Lumas surrounding Luma, who excitedly says,
Let us begin.
Once again, however, before we get to the content of the story itself, we have a few more things to talk about relating to Rosalina herself that will become relevant when the time comes. Firstly, Gateway Galaxy, the first galaxy you explore in the game. Once you catch all the Star Bunnies, you get to meet Rosalina, and she has this goddess-like glow surrounding her, while she explains the basic concepts and ideas that the game will build upon. This implies that she is a greater being than anyone we've seen yet, which will be challenged in the storybook later. Gateway Galaxy as a whole is super important to her character, so remember it when we bring it up again. Not anything too important yet, but what does become important is when you collect the first star and bring it to the Comet Observatory. She thanks you for the help and says that the Lumas are like a family to her. Remember this. I know there's a lot to remember, but please, it'll all make sense. I feel like it's also important to note that Rosalina always refers to Peach as Mario's special one. Let's fast forward a lot now to when you can re-enter Gateway Galaxy for a second star. You meet Rosalina once more at the top of the small platform, and she now explains that this planet is extremely important to her. She visits it every 100 years, and says that the Luma with Mario allowing him to spin may grow up to become a planet, a comet, or a power star. She travels around the universe to find a place for each Luma to be reborn. She never expected to be burdened with this job, however. It would seem that she has never told anyone about this except Mario because of what the red Luma that appears soon after says. Which finally brings us to the thesis of this video, the storybook. I believe that the storybook explains absolutely everything about Rosalina, how she got to where she is, why she is doing what she does, and her mind throughout the early stages of beginning her journey. Let's go through each individual chapter and figure out what it all means for the greater story of this character, starting off with Chapter 1, The Celestial Duo. A young girl finds a crashed spaceship with a small star child inside. The child explains that they were looking for their mother before crashing, and that she is on a comet. The girl promises to stay with this child until the mother is found. They look for an extremely long time and see nothing, until the girl decided that the best course of action is to go out there and find the mother themselves. The rest of the storybook is about the search for this mother, which is resolved fantastically. Chapter 1 is the beginning sparks of passion and commitment, with a sense of naivety. This young girl gives up her previous life just to help this child find their mother, which is true commitment no matter what age you are. The concepts laid out here are detailed much more later on, so let's move on to Chapter 2, Starbits. After looking for the Star Child for a few days, the girl realizes that she forgot to bring any water along this journey, which is not the brightest idea all things considered. The Luma eventually starts eating some Starbits and offers the girl some, to which she eventually concedes. Eventually, they decide to collect as many Starbits as possible to keep the both of them sustained. And, I quote, "The Starbits tasted like honey." This chapter goes more in depth about the young girl's naivety, which was implied earlier in Chapter 1. She brings all these lovely snacks with her and forgets the most basic and important thing that every living being needs due to her excitement about starting this trip. Outside of that, however, this mainly just shows a growing bond between the Luma and the girl, which is also important for later. Time for Chapter 3, The Comet. The girl and the Luma stumble across a huge glowing comet which they decide to get to ASAP. Once they get to it, they see that it's made entirely of ice, but Luma's mother is not there. After a short break, Luma finds that tons of star bits are encased in the ice, and the two decide to stay on the comet whilst they look from then on. There doesn't seem to be a lot to this one, to be honest, but I do still think it's important because it shows the continuous growing bond between the girl and the Luma. So, without much to analyse here, let's move on to an extremely important chapter. Chapter 4, The Dream. The young girl dreams about her mother leaving for whatever reason, and the girl asks where she's going. Her mother says that she's not going anywhere and she'll always be watching over her, like the sun and the moon. Then, the girl asks about the rain. How will she be watching when it's cloudy and can't see the sun or moon? Her mother then says that she will turn into a star in the clouds and wait for her tears to dry. When the girl awakes, she is in tears, which the Luma confuses with star bits. She is crying because she'll never see her mother again, and they both end up crying in each other's company. After looking for God knows how long, they still haven't found Luma's mother, and the girl reiterates what her mother said to her in the dream. The rain clouds won't go away if you keep crying. She then says to Luma, "I'll take care of you," which seems to resonate with the both of them, ending chapter 4. So, to begin this, it is heavily implied here that the girl is going on this journey alongside the Luma to find her mother, as well as the Lumas. This would explain why she was so eager to leave, as she seems very grief-stricken in this chapter. She also probably sees a bit of herself in the Luma, which would make her want to go on this journey more. She takes the life lessons her mother taught her down to the Luma she is with, which sparks the idea to take care of the Luma herself, beginning the arc of finding her passion. There is more to talk about once we have hindsight from later chapters, so let's not waste any more time and get to chapter 5, Home. The two both start working on making their home, which they are both really excited to do. Turns out, furniture and tools were stored in the big ice comet, so that's convenient. It seems to be a little familiar to us, but the Luma states that it's pretty big for the two of them. They have a library, bedroom, kitchen, fountain, and gate, but they still seem to be missing one thing: the rest of the girl's family. She ends up falling asleep in the brand new starship, ending chapter 5. Similar to chapter 3, not a lot happens here to progress the story or hint at specific themes the story is going for, but it continues to show the genuine bond the girl and Luma have, whilst also foreshadowing more about the story with the girl's final line. I believe the girl created the house to be as big as it is because she wanted to bring the rest of her family along, and only realized when it was too late that that's not possible. There are more ideas that, again, get later context with future chapters, so let's swiftly move on to chapter 6, Friends. A brand new planet appears within the two's crosshairs, and a brand new Luma emerges. The girl was excited, but Luma was a little uneasy. The two Lumas both stared at each other until the original said, "My mama." The other Luma repeats this and they begin to dance happily around the girl, who couldn't help but laugh. All of a sudden, countless more Lumas appeared from the planet and joined in, which only made the girl laugh harder. Eventually, once they all calmed down, the girl names each and every Luma before deciding to move them all into her new home tomorrow, ending chapter 6. This chapter truly solidifies the girl's role that was foreshadowed before, as she has become the mother the Luma was searching for. Instead of seeming disappointed or upset at this sudden population increase of her home, the girl is completely welcoming to each and every one of the Lumas, showing that she accepts her role here. She is doing wonderfully in her life right now, and nothing seems to stop her. So, let's see how it comes close to crashing down in the most important chapter we'll cover. Chapter 7, The Telescope. One day, the girl decides to find her original home through her telescope. She looks through and eventually finds it, and realizes how small it looks from where she is. After looking for a while, she eventually comes across a hill with a single tree and a flower bed, which seemed extremely familiar to her. She zooms in more and finds the terrace she used to use for stargazing when she lived there. She remembers looking up at the stars with her father on the hill. She remembers sledding down the hill with her brother. And she remembers having picnics with her mother on the hill. After all of this, the young girl bursts into tears, shouting out that she wants to go home. She wants to sit by the hill. She wants to see her mother. She knew that she wouldn't find her mother out here deep down because, and I quote, "She's sleeping under the tree on the hill." A deafening silence covers the surroundings. Ending chapter 7. This chapter alone explains absolutely everything. The girl took on the role of mother to the Lumas because she looked up to her mother the most out of anyone she knew. She was desperately clinging on to what she learned in the dream whilst also knowing the reality of what truly happened deep down. And these facts all weigh down on her. She's been bottling up these emotions up until now, where they all crash down and break her. This chapter on its own doesn't have a satisfying conclusion until the next one, which is a major shift from the last ones. Grief takes a while to truly pass, and this is an incredible and respectful example of it. Sometimes you don't truly experience grief until one small mundane moment. All the girl did here was reminisce, and that alone was enough to make her regret everything. Whilst this is by far the greatest, most well-written part of this story, we still have a couple more chapters to go through to wrap things up. So let's move on to chapter 8, The Wish. Whilst the girl cries once more, the Lumas attempt to cheer her up. They say that her mother will always be a part of her, and that she's always close by. The Luma then says that they love Starbase because they remind them of their mother, which is an interesting detail I'll get to in a bit. This didn't seem to cheer the girl up, so the Luma suddenly had a very different idea: to turn into a comet that can carry everyone alone. The Luma soared into the sky before crashing back down, creating explosions and craters, until all the lights and explosions transformed into a comet's tail, showing the brand new, reborn Luma. The girl naturally couldn't believe what she saw and kept questioning it, until a band of new Lumas explained that it's the species' destiny to transform into different celestial objects, like stars and planets. One Luma states that they want to become a star that makes someone smile when they grow up, and then all the Lumas chime in together to say, "No more crying, mama." The girl finally understands everything, hugs each of the Lumas close to her, and no more tears fall down her eyes from that day onwards, ending chapter 8. This chapter really shows off the messages this story wants to portray perfectly. Don't be afraid of growing up. Notice how years seem to pass and the girl looks the exact same throughout the whole story. I believe this metaphorically means that the girl isn't growing up mentally or is afraid to grow up and move on. However, this chapter explains that it is perfectly okay to grow up and mature. Don't be afraid of your adult years, or your motherly years if that applies to you. As long as you are confident and in the right headspace, you will succeed. This beautiful light show the Luma becomes is what growing up is all about. And in the girl's case, it's what taking care of someone is all about. Isn't it beautiful to see someone you've put time and effort into raising become someone so fantastic and life-changing? Well, that's what the girl takes from this, and is what she decides to keep doing until the end of time. Finally, chapter 9, Family. The Lumas and the girl are all working on a welcome party for a brand new Luma, which they are all extremely excited about. The girl thinks to herself, and I quote, "This is my family now, and I will stay with them until they are ready to leave the nest. And when they do leave, I'll see them off with a smile, because that's what makes a mother happiest." The girl dreams about the planet she once called home, and thinks it would be nice to return to every now and then. Ending the storybook. There isn't a lot to analyze here, but that's because we reached that scene that would play before the credits if this was a movie, showing all the characters living their lives after learning the lessons laid out on their journey. What the girl says here is exactly what the story is about: allowing your loved ones to leave when they need to, and accepting that fact. Once the final page is turned, Rosalina states that her story is finished. Her story is finished. You definitely did pick up the pieces I laid out for you throughout this video, but just in case you didn't, Rosalina is the young girl in this story. The designs are very familiar, the architecture they both have is identical, and there are so many individual moments that could easily resonate with both of them. So yeah.
That's why she's best girl.
However, even though we are done here, we still have one moment to talk about, that being the secret ending once you get 120 stars. Rosalina says that she will watch over us from beyond the stars, and then spends time in the houses. Once she's done, she flies off with the Comet Observatory, and leaves behind a mossy, decayed starship with a single Luma on it, who waves goodbye. It's likely this starship is the original one used by Rosalina and that original Luma before they began construction of the observatory, which is a really nice way to tie everything together. Overall, everything relating to the storybook is genuinely fantastic, and adds so much more depth to Rosalina as a character, the world of Super Mario Galaxy, and the game as a whole. I would kill for something like this to return in a brand new Mario game, but I honestly doubt it will, considering Nintendo's philosophies when it comes to games. But overall, that doesn't really matter, considering how brilliant this story is, and the fact that it exists in the first place. You know what the craziest thing about this whole storybook? It was never even intended to be in the game. Yep. According to a single Google search, a person on the dev team created the story in their spare time, and the directors must have loved it so much they plopped it in. This is only a small part of Mario Galaxy. There is so much more to this game which is so insanely well done, it is absurd. Super Mario Galaxy 1 is my favourite Mario game and one of my top 10 favourite games of all time, and the storybook is a huge part as of why. That's about all I need to say, so I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.